This is the Haulin Assets podcast where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody, to the Haulin Assets podcast. This is episode number 64. We're going to be talking about October financials, among other things. Today, I am Craig, and he is...
Chris.
Chris, welcome back.
Good to be here.
Is this 2 weeks in a row?
This is 2 weeks in a row. It's a little while since we've done that, but it's because we missed 2 weeks in a row before this.
That's okay.
It's kind of really just getting us back
on track. We don't
want
to spoil people.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
We don't want our weekly show to actually... be weekly, so we'll be careful about that in the future. Okay, so today we're talking about October financials, and we're going to have some other stuff coming up at the end, a listener question that I will explain a little bit later.
But it's a good one.
Yeah,
so,
I really
stick
like
around.
It.
Yeah, it's one that it's actually a fairly common question people ask.
And it's one that I think at the very, very beginning of the show, in the first few episodes, you kind of hinted at this, and then we never really talked about it much anymore, so I'm excited to get to it. But before we do, I do want to remind everybody to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com. That's Haulin, no G, HaulinAssets.com. Or sorry, HaulinAssetsLLC.com.
You'll get it.
Talk
eventually.
about reverting back to the first 10 episodes. And please go check out the full show notes for this and other episodes there. You can comment on these episodes. You can submit your own questions. So if you enjoy the Q&A that we have here at the end, you can do that yourself there. You can also find us on Facebook and find the Haulin Assets page and submit questions there as well. We hope to see you there. And if you enjoy the show, if you like what we do, please, for heaven's sake, go on to Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite service is and give us a 5-star review. All right, Chris, October financials.
There are some financials for October, but we've got a new feature that we're going to start putting or including with the financial
with the
episodes.
Monthly numbers.
Yeah, that I think is kind of cool.
Okay, what's that?
And it's a visualization thing. So there's going to be, if you just go to the show notes for any of one of the financial episodes going forward, and even most of them going backwards, I think we're adding these in. But you'll be able to see the route the truck took for the month.
Oh,
so
nice.
It'll pull up a map of the U.S. and it'll show everywhere the truck's traveled with some. Not all the deadhead stuff's in there, so you're not seeing. Necessarily a route will end and then another one will start and no deadhead in between, because you're kind of limited to the number of routes you can put into the software that we're using to do that. But it's kind of cool. It kind of lets you see where the truck went over the month, and you look at October's and it shows it going across the country a couple times down into Texas. It's crazy how many miles those trucks put on in a month.
Yeah, and it's amazing. For safety and security reasons, this would be a horrible idea. But wouldn't it be fun to be able to track the truck in real time and people could go, wave high as it's going down the road?
Chase Mike down.
Yeah, exactly.
We've had a few listeners do that, chase them down when they've spotted them out on the road. So,
nice.
Yeah.
It's what a pleasure to hear from you guys, however you do it. So, so that route, people can go check that out right now for October.
Yep. So if you go look at the October financials, it'll be there embedded on that web page. And
what's the web page, Chris?
It's HaulinAssetsLLC.com. Just look at
don't forget
episode
the LLC.
64. Yeah, don't forget the LLC, or it'll take you nowhere.
That's right. I forget the LLC. That's why I got to bring it up every once in a while. Okay, so that's a very cool feature. I hope people go check that out. And Chris, as I understand it, you got to finally spend some significant time in the truck this month.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it significant, but
significant
over 24
for you
hours.
these days.
Significant for me these days. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So yeah, I picked up Mike had come back into town with a load. He'd been on the road for 2 weeks straight, and instead of delivering in Salt Lake, this one went up to Idaho Falls, Idaho. So it's on
3 hours.
Yeah, a little more than 3 hours in the truck. But so I took it up there Sunday night, dropped it off at a Winco at like 2:00 in the morning, and then the next day picked up a load of potatoes and brought it back to Salt Lake that night.
Very nice. Was it going to Five Guys?
Hopefully, because that's a good place.
That's that's
famous...
the chain my uncle's got a contract with. So I constantly see his potatoes in Five Guys.
Yeah, they're good. the potatoes. Anything at Five Guys is good. We should go there right after this.
Oh, well, we'll see. My I need to be able to fit in a truck diet is going really well, Chris. I don't want you to ruin that.
Yeah.
So how was it being in the truck?
It was good. It was good to get back in. And yeah, it's always good. I think, as an owner of the company, that's something that you just need to do every once in a while, just to kind of
stay in touch with it
and really, more than anything, stay in touch with, what the drivers have to go through. Cause this load, it was frozen turkey for Thanksgiving.
Sure.
This time of year, taking that load up there, and, I was delivering to a Winco, and I got up there about 11 o'clock at night. Well, one of the drivers earlier that day that had delivered something there had broke one of their docks. So they have three doors that you can pull into, and they broke one of them. One of them wasn't functional, and the other two had trailers with no trucks in them. So they had to wait till another Winco driver came out to move one of the trailers out of the way so that I could go in and pull in. So anyway, it just made it so instead of delivering at 11 o'clock like I was planning on, I didn't end up delivering till like 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's just remembering, some of the frustrations you have and the things you have to deal with as a driver. All of a sudden, I got a couple hours sleep, get woken up in the middle of the night to go move the truck back where it needs to be to get unloaded, and then pull it back forward after they get unloaded, try to go back to sleep again. And it's just, it just makes it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Dealing with that kind of stuff. And it just makes you, I think, a little more understanding of your drivers.
It's like undercover boss, Chris. You're keeping in touch with the little people, right?
Well, I don't know if I'd say that. But yeah, trying to stay in touch with the people who do a lot of the hard work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's see, you mentioned, I can't remember if it was the last episode or the one before that you are looking to buy a new truck. I was curious, how's that going?
It's going, but slower than I would like, which is like most things in my life. But
this is one of your things, right? You don't want to jump the gun and get something that isn't going to benefit the business, right?
Yeah.
You got to find the right truck.
You do, and I think we found the right one. Got a deposit down on it. Haven't closed on it. Got a little bit of work we need to do with it, like install an APU, but it's getting there. And I think over the next couple of months, we're probably going to start seeing some more episodes. I've gotten some more ideas on things I've learned and additional info that I think will be good over the next couple of months. We'll probably start to have some episodes that are geared towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, sounds good. Well, Chris, anything else before we dive into the numbers?
Let's hit the numbers.
Let's do it. So how did October go?
October was another average-ish month.
Average-ish?
Yeah.
As far as total revenue?
As far as the bottom line, what's the most important. But no, actually with total revenue, we had a little bit of an uptick. It was higher than normal. So $23,550 and 1 cent.
And 1 cent. That's interest, right?
Yeah, that's the interest.
Your 0.01% checking account?
Savings account.
Savings account, right. Yeah. Okay.
So that was the total revenue for the month. So that's actually higher than normal. You usually a little closer to 20.
And to refresh people's memories, September was a good month. It was, the numbers were starting to tick up. Your rate per mile was doing pretty well, and so things looked good in September. And October kind of continues that. Then?
Yeah, it did. Good. Yeah, so the all-in rate per mile. So total miles ran was 11,694, which is also a little bit higher than normal.
Yeah, like we say, usually 10
around
to 12.
10, yeah, 12's on the high end. So this is more on the high end, but yeah, 10's probably a little bit closer to normal.
Okay.
So a little higher than normal, but that was good. Deadhead was again low, and in fact, one of, if not the lowest percentages. It was 3.7% of the miles.
Oh, nice.
Deadhead, so 443. But I want to, full disclosure on this, there was one load that we dropped off kind of in central Utah that we ended up technically deadheading up to Salt Lake for, but we were going to take another load out of that area, but we had a broker that was so desperate to fill a load, he paid us to deadhead back to Salt Lake.
So on the books, it's not deadhead.
On the books, it's really not deadhead, even though technically, we were driving that distance, not loaded, but we only drove that long of a distance because we had something lined up that they paid us to go up there and do that. And so that's I think that's an indicator of two things. One, the freight market's really good right now because most of the time a company, a broker, or shipper is not going to
do that.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. And two, just the fact that the deadhead miles have been this low. and they were really pretty low last month too, is an indication that you're just not having to go very far to find a load. And so, the market's really good. We're seeing it in the rates. We're seeing it in the low deadhead. We're seeing it in kind of the desperation of brokers and shippers to move things. So, take advantage while it's hot. What did we say last month?
Yeah, a lot
store
of things.
Away like going back to our Bible days. Store away like
Joseph of Egypt. Right?
Yeah,
okay.
It's
Chris's
time to
Sunday
hoard.
School.
Be your little squirrel and hoard your nuts. I probably should have said that.
Can we get that on a T-shirt?
Haulin Assets, hoard your nuts.
Oh my gosh. We need a store, Chris. We need a merch store.
Yeah, you're ruined for the day now, aren't you? Do we need to stop recording at this point? Am I bright
I
red?
just learned. I'm sorry. This is a detour, but we're used to that. I just learned that your wife sometimes listens to the show, and I sometimes say awkward things myself. So apparently, last time I described a cylindrical rubber-like object that you had strewn on the floor, and anyway.
trying to describe the airbag, and that's not what she had pictured in her mind.
That's good. Okay. All right. So hoard your nuts, everybody. Chris, tell me about, back to the numbers, days on the road. Was it a typical month as far as those numbers go?
Yeah, I think in fact the full days on the road, I think we were, if I remember right, exactly the same 19. I think we had one more partial day on the road this month than last month, this month was 6.
Okay. So 19, I seem to remember it being closer to like 22 in a normal month.
I think 22 total is pretty.
22 days on the road total. Okay,
yeah, not necessarily full days.
Gotcha. Okay, very good.
25 total, which is probably a little bit higher than normal, but 19 full, 6 partial.
Nice. Now you said the revenue was $23,550
and 1 cent.
And 1 cent. Yeah. And then the miles run was 11,694. There we go. I found it. So what does that give us rate per mile?
It was $2.01.
Hey, nice.
Yeah, pretty close to last month. So north of the $2. So I mean, when you're talking including deadhead and everything, that's pretty good. Yeah,
in the first year that you were running, you had a goal. You had your sights set on 180, if I remember right.
180 was a little higher than our break-even point. So I knew if we could get our all-in rate at that 180, we'd be able to make a decent amount of money. So that $2 is
pretty good. Nice. Yeah. Okay, very good. So that sounds like a good month. Anything that we want to talk about from the other numbers, from the balance sheet, from the P&L?
So looking at the P&L, let's take a step back and let's talk about what the net income, the profit was for the month. It was $2,631.57. So again, that's where the average is. That's really a pretty average month. Nothing too spectacular. With as high as revenue as we had and the rate per mile that we had, it should have been a little bit higher. But again, we're running into there was quite a bit of maintenance costs and repair costs for this month, right around $3,000, which is definitely higher than average. And it's just making me realize more and more why, the big companies have a tendency to buy new instead of, operating old equipment.
Right.
It's one of those hotly debated topics in the industry. And I see why, it just makes it more clear why they do that, especially when you've got a driver in it. I think when you're an owner operator, especially, and you're driving the truck, it's not as big of a deal to deal with breakdowns because you're the one handling everything. But you start to do that with, a bigger trucking company. It's a headache for the driver. It's a headache for the dispatcher, whoever's managing the driver, trying to fix everything and rearrange everything. And just more and more people have to get involved, which means more payroll. And it's just, there's a lot of costs that go in with, managing breakdowns on the road or, managing repairs that need to happen.
And I imagine there's something that goes into it with the whole idea of you take care of what you own. And if you have an employee driver and you hand them a newer truck, there's going to be less need for constant maintenance and repairs.
Yeah.
They can maybe drive it a little bit harder. Whereas because you're the owner operator and you got this truck, that's my baby.
Right? Yeah.
It may have 500,000 miles on it, but I'm gonna love this thing.
Yep.
So I wonder if there's something that goes into that.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah. Okay, good. So a profit of $2,600. So you're able to put away a little bit for, presumably early next year when things slow down a little bit. You're hoarding those nuts, Chris.
Hoarding the nuts, yeah.
All right.
Another thing that happened, looking at the P&L, why that profit number was a little bit lower than normal was I do payroll on a weekly basis. So every Friday is when I run payroll. There were 5 Fridays in October.
Oh, sure.
And so that means there was an extra payroll. So the payroll expense is a little bit higher than normal.
Sweet for Mike.
It's good for Mike. Yeah, he had a good month.
Yeah, no kidding.
Lots of miles and 5 paydays. That makes for a good month.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, very good. Anything else we want to pull out?
Not from there.
Okay, sounds good. Let's talk then, Chris, about the listener question that got submitted. This is a question we got. Oh boy, I lost my... There we go. There's my notes. We got this from, what was his name?
Jason.
Jason sent us a really, really great note. We'll get to the actual note in just a second, but it has to do with partnerships and investors and that sort of thing. And so you wanted to kind of preface this by talking a little bit for a few minutes about what is a partner, what is an investor, and kind of getting us all on the same page as to what those terms mean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times those terms are really used interchangeably, and they're not. They're different. There's actually, it may seem like a subtle difference, but there are actually really big differences between those two. And I'm going to throw another one in there, lender.
Okay.
Because a lot of guys, when they're first starting or thinking about starting a trucking company, one of the big roadblocks into doing that is going to be the funding for it, right? The money. So, one way to solve that problem is to bring on a partner or an investor or a lender. But all three of those are different things.
Okay, so what is a partner then?
So I actually went in and looked these up online just to get the actual definition for them. So I'm going to read through all these definitions between the two, and then we'll talk a little bit about each one of them and kind of my thoughts about them. So partner is either a pair of people engaged together in the same activity.
Okay, sure.
So it's 2 people engaged together in the same activity, basically. The investor is a person or an organization that puts money into financial plans, property, etc., with the expectation of achieving a profit.
Sure.
And a lender, this is one of those really high quality definitions, an organization or person that lends money.
Dictionaries are fantastic.
Yeah,
okay.
Sometimes they just hit the nail on the head, don't they?
But okay, so as I am hearing partner versus investor, that makes sense. There's a big difference there. Investor versus lender, I'm detecting a subtler difference because in both cases you're putting money into something and you want a return on it. But we're going to get to that difference in just a moment, right? Do you want to dive into how you think about a partnership?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about partnerships and then the investors and lenders. So, first with a partnership, I really kind of like that definition because it's both people or people working towards the same goal. And we talked about, when we talked about partners earlier on in the episode, we talked about...
I'm sorry, I have to stop you. Chris, we live in the great state of Utah. Do you know the Utah State song?
No.
It's the worst state song in the union, I guarantee it.
Never
it
heard
starts
it.
off
Do
going,
we have one?
Utah, people working together. So there you go.
Look
All
at
right.
you go.
I'm sorry, I could not resist as you were talking about that.
I didn't know you could sing so well.
I got mad pipes. Okay, well, sorry, go on.
As cheesy as this is, it is people working together towards the same goal. And we talked a little bit early on in the podcast, one of the first episodes when we were talking about partnerships. One of the Koch brothers I'd listened to his podcast, and he talked about one of the things they look for in a partnership is a good partnership's always going to have 3 key elements to it: shared vision, shared values, and complementary skill sets.
Oh, right.
So when you think about that in this definition of partner, both people working towards the same goal. That goal is really what your vision is. And the key word in this is that they're both working. And I think that's one of the big differences between a partner and an investor is the partner typically is actively engaged in the business. And that's where you've got 2 people that have skill sets that they're working towards. And the complementing skill sets, I think people oftentimes discount that, but I think that's one of the most important things. I look in my business and, some of the partnerships that I've got in my businesses, You don't want every partner being a really, really good accountant and nobody good at sales, right? Because that's you're really going down one track in one lane, and you need a broader set of skills. And so you're typically going to want to have that one partner that's really good at accounting, one partner that's really good at sales, and maybe you need to have somebody that's good at some other things, but you don't want everybody good at the same thing. So that's one of the keys is everybody's working, they've got their different skill sets, and everybody's kind of focusing on,
on their niche.
And you kind of look at it, you hear all the time, I know I hear this in the military a lot, you hear it in sports a lot, is the importance of people staying in their own lane. And if we relate that to trucking, what happens when that truck veers out of its lane?
Trouble.
It causes trouble. It causes all kinds of issues. And the same thing happens in a business when you've got two different partners and each of them have their own lane that they stick in. If you get one partner moving out of their lane, going into somebody else's lane, what's that going to do? It causes problems.
Right.
Same thing when a truck leaves its lane on the freeway. So it's really important that you have those skill sets. And so, that's, I think, really kind of the key elements of that partnership is you've got individuals working together towards the same goals, using their strengths, focusing on their lane based off of their strengths.
Yeah.
And it makes, it really makes for a good business.
100% at the end of this episode, I am playing the Utah State song that's happening. Okay.
Enlighten us all. Even us Utahns that have never heard of it, which is probably 99% of Utahns.
And consider yourself lucky. Honestly, it's terrible. I hope people stick around for it. You're going to get a real kick out of it. It's awful. Okay. So an investor then, as I'm listening to you talk about partners and partnerships, those are people working toward a common goal. An investor, I imagine, is somebody who is putting their financial capital up, but they're not necessarily doing any work for the business.
Yeah, that's usually the way, the big difference, I would say. So partners oftentimes will put in money too, but then they've got something that they're contributing other than the money. When somebody is strictly putting money into the business, they're an investor. And it's a very expensive way to get money.
Okay, so, and this probably gets into the difference between an investor and a lender. Why is an investor so expensive?
Well, because they've got an ownership in the business. And so you take, for example, say you go 50-50 and you're the partner. You didn't necessarily put any money up front, but you're going to be running it. You're going to be working in it full time. Then you've got the other partner who just strictly invests money. Well, that partner owns 50% of the business. So that means when the company makes a profit, that partner gets
50%, yeah.
When you sell the business, if you build this really big, nice business and you sell it, the partner gets, or the investor gets 50% of the business. And so if your business turns out to be successful, then you've paid a lot of money to that person just for giving you money.
Yeah. So, no matter how well you do, you're not going to escape that unless you buy them out.
You're not. And then when you buy them out, it's probably going to cost you a lot of money.
Exactly.
So it's very common in the startup world to bring on investors like that. Sometimes you just can't get around it, but it's usually kind of one of the mechanisms of last resort that you want to resort to when you go into starting your own business.
So it sounds like maybe a lender would be a better bet in many cases?
If you can get it. A lender is typically going to be your best bet if you can find somebody who will lend you the money. And then with that, it's like lending money on a house. You're going to pay a fixed amount for a certain period of time. And that's usually what a lender is just they want an interest return on that
instead of an ownership stake.
And so that's
obviously we've got banks and credit unions that do that, but are there examples that you can think of private individuals just acting as a lender?
There are some. It's very less common. A lot of the times when it comes to a lender, if you're getting it from a private person, it's probably going to be somebody who believes in you and wants to see you successful. And so part of their benefit of loaning you money might just be to see you be successful or, help you. Oftentimes you look at me in my situation, I've had people who've helped me along the way.
Sure.
Most successful people have had I'd argue probably all successful people have had people who have helped them along their way. And there are times in people's lives when they want to pay back, give back. And I've seen people do that in that kind of way. They, you know what, I want to see you successful in your business. Here's some money. I'll lend it to you. You can pay me, but they don't ask for that high return that an investor typically would.
Right. Okay, good. So we've got our 3 definitions. Do we want to get to the question now from...
Yeah, we probably should. The actual question from Jason.
From Jason. All right. So do you want to go ahead and read what Jason sent you?
Why don't you read it, and then I'll answer it.
In my mellifluous tones.
People don't have to listen to me the whole time.
So Jason says, Chris, I hope this email finds you well. I've got a few questions. If I was looking for investors, do you have a guideline on how to go about setting up the partnership? So there's that thing you're talking about. People use the terms interchangeably. And then do we want to do the second question, or do you want to answer that first?
Let's answer this one first, and we'll go to the second question. So I think first off is you need to decide what you're looking for. Are you looking for a partner? Are you looking for an investor or a lender? And that's what you first need to decide. And then you're going to kind of structure it accordingly. And in a lot of situations, you may have to bring on an investor. And so that investor is going to get some ownership in the company. And, you know, one of the things that you really need to do is just figure out, okay, is it a 50-50 partnership where each partner gets, 50% of the profits plus, is at risk for 50% of the losses, or is there some other kind of structure in there that works really well for everybody? So that's the first thing you kind of need to figure out. And then especially if you're going into a partnership type of situation where each of you are going to have a certain set of responsibilities, I would define that, make sure it's very well clear in everything, and not just talk about it. This is one of the things that, especially when you're working with people you haven't worked with before, really with anybody, you need to get an operating agreement and sign it. And that operating agreement, you can find boilerplate templates of operating agreements online that you can use to kind of, as a template, and then you can change it and tweak it as you need to, but it needs to be in writing. Who does what, who has ownership in what, how much is that ownership? And, a true operating agreement is going to say how you can buy out all their owners, how you value the company, and a lot of other things. And I would definitely get one of those.
Yeah. I mean, if you were doing this 1,500 years ago in a different part of the world, you might be able to get away with a handshake, but nowadays that's a really risky way to do business.
Well, and a lot of times I've even seen in situations where you may be 5 years down the road in this business, and everybody's memory of what you negotiated 5 years ago is going to be different.
Yep.
If you've got that in writing from the very beginning, you've got a document that you can refer back to and make sure, say, hey, this is what we said originally. We may be on we may have understood it different or remember it different, but you got a document you can go back to that you can refer to.
Yeah. I've got my brother assists in dental practice acquisitions. And he says, even when it's a father selling his practice to a son, we write everything down. It doesn't matter. It's just always a good idea.
Yeah, it's a bad idea if you don't.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so get an operating agreement. Make sure you sign it. What else do you want to talk about on this one?
Another thing that I think is really important with, especially with partnerships, is it needs to be, and investors, it needs to be a win-win situation for everybody. I kind of stress this in everything that I do, whether it's working with our clients or working with partners or, anybody else. You want to have a win-win situation. It's got to be a good situation for both parties. And the reason behind that is if you've got one partner, one person who feels like they're getting the raw end of the deal, it's just going to create animosity, and it's going to hinder the company from being as successful as it possibly could. So make sure you work out a situation that everybody's happy with. The last thing you want to do is start on a relationship like this and start it off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the second question from Jason here is, how do you go about finding investors if that's what I end up doing?
That's a really good question. And that's kind of in some ways a hard question to answer. But the first thing that I would do is I'd always start with people people that you've been able to observe in life for a longer period of time. I kind of think back at my partnerships. The only partnership that I've had that really went south, and it didn't go south hard like you see some of them do. It just didn't work out the way that I would have liked it to. And it was somebody that I didn't know well before we formed the partnership. the ones where I was able to, I knew the people, I'd seen them in working environments, I knew what they work like, and that's how you kind of know what you're getting into and whether you have those complementing skill sets, whether you have that same shared values, whether you have the shared vision. The longer you've known somebody, the more you've been able to interact with them before you go into the partnership, the more likely you're going to find the person that you need to be successful.
Right. Now, this kind of flies in the face of that old adage of don't do business with family, or friends or whatever. But you say that may just be the best way to go.
In some situations it is. And that's where, I would never work with somebody just because they were my friend. That's where you need to, it's not necessarily whether they're your friend or a family member or somebody else. It needs to be somebody that you have a, intimate relationship with, enough that you've been able to observe how they work and you know what you're getting into. There's not going to be so many surprises. And
so in your case, you're not doing business with them because they are family or because they're a friend. You're doing business with them because you know them.
I know them,
right? Okay.
And they've got what I'm kind of looking for in a partner.
And if that's not a viable solution for somebody, if they can't find somebody they know, they don't have that network established, or there's nobody in their network who's capable of this, then what would be the next step? Where else would you go?
Friends of friends. You really need to go. It's not like, you could technically, I guess, post an ad online
Craigslist or something.
Craigslist or something like that. I guess that possibly could be an option, but you really need to be introduced one way or another, whether it's somebody or you're talking to people and somebody says, well, I know a guy that,
that might be
interested.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of start a really extensive, in-depth interview process and, try to find that person that you think would maybe be a good fit.
All right. Very good.
One thing that I'd like to say about that, though, is if you start doing that, you're looking for somebody who's proven that they've been able to succeed at something in life. You don't want somebody that's, desperate for a job or desperate for something else. You really, when you partner with somebody, you need somebody who has, demonstrated they have the ability to stick with things, to be successful, to persevere through some difficult times. And, that successful thing in today's day and age, people are able to make themselves look very successful when they're not. You got to kind of look through the facade. Just because they drive fancy cars or have a really big house doesn't necessarily mean they're successful. It may just mean that they're in debt up to their eyeballs and, 2 days away from declaring bankruptcy. And that's definitely not the kind of person that you want to get into business with.
All right. Well, Jason, I hope this answered your questions. We good on those, Chris?
I think so.
Okay,
I hope
good.
So.
Well, if anybody has any others, then I'll just remind you again, HaulinAssetsLLC.com is where you can go check out full show notes and comment on our episodes. And we do keep track of those. And so if you have any questions, we will address those in future episodes. I think these monthly financial ones are a great place for us to hit some listener questions when we get them. So keep them coming.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to review the show, find us on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure you tell Chris what a sterling example of hosting I am, so that he continues to employ me. Okay, so Chris, we good for today?
I think we're good.
All right.
That sounds like a wrap.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you later.
What a great place to be, blessed from heaven above. It's a land that we love. This is the place. Utah, with its mountains and valleys. Utah, with its canyons and streams. You can go